Welcome to my quick take about what's happening currently with Donald Trump and possibly might be impacting US-China relations and Chinese investments, right? So I want to offer you mainly 3 points. Number one being that I think it's now become more likely that the next president of the United States might be Donald Trump. And this will, of course, impact US-China relations. And while most people possibly think, well, this is not good for Chinese stocks, I would offer a second opinion to that. In my opinion, I think the Chinese will regard this as good news. We've now seen already Xi Jinping and the foreign ministry reaching out and saying a couple of words about, how they wish Donald Trump all the best and concerned about the situation and stuff. You would say that Donald Trump has started a trade war against China and is generally quite hawkish about China and has negative views about China. All true, but a matter of facts are that HSI Chinese stocks have rallied during the Trump years. And we also need to acknowledge the facts that there is no administration that has taken more measures against China and in a not so direct way as Donald Trump has than the Biden administration. So they're leading in the number of sanctions and they're running a containment strategy against China, and that's become very obvious to the observer. While the general opinion would still be that Democrats are more pro-China and less a problem for the Chinese, I would say the contrary is the case. And so I think the Chinese would actually welcome Mr. Trump in becoming the second or in his second term and the next president. I think also the point number two would be that under the Trump administration, we would see Chinese cars entering the US. And I would say so because Trump publicly announced that he's inviting Chinese companies to build in the United States. His take is he wants to see American workers produce in the United States for the US. I think that's a deal where the Chinese would be very open to, but currently they are not looking to invest in America because they think their investments might be seized or taken away from them, as we've seen with a couple of foreign countries, being their assets being seized and so on by this current administration. That, of course, has different reasons, but it's also my number three talking point, which is that I think under a Trump administration, it's more likely that we will see a peaceful outcome of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And I think that's really good news for the Chinese because, many are thinking, like, if you just read the public opinion and media posts out there, that the Chinese are in a boat with the Russians and they want to destroy Ukraine and fight against the West. I don't think that's the case. I think the Chinese try to stay as neutral as possible. Of course, it's not entirely neutral, but they're not delivering military aid, at least not in a sense that it's very significant, that is even, against the rules and against sanctions. In fact, they are adhering to sanctions, namely the bank sanctions and so on. And they're doing still business as usual with Ukraine and Russia both. So yes, they will be sending, let's say, drones and chips and whatever that might be used in the war. But frankly, every country is doing that currently. Even Western countries, even we in Germany are buying Russian gas still. Yes, going through other countries. But, there are countries like India shaking hands with Putin and buying the oil and so on. So, all of this talk around how China is supporting Russia in this war by buying stuff from Russia and supporting its economy and so on. In my opinion, this is kind of some fake narratives out there and not real reasons to say that China is on the side of Russia in this war. In fact, I think China would be very pleased with a peaceful outcome. In fact, they made a peace plan and they only are waiting for negotiations to start, and they would love to make business with Ukraine and Russia just as before the war. And that would be great news overall for risk assets and Chinese stocks in particular, of course. And I'm just saying that under Trump, this might be more likely as an outcome because Trump would, in my opinion, more focus on domestic matters. He might inherit an economy that might be weak, and he would maybe stop some wars and focus on those domestic matters again, focus on the economy and not be as ideological as the Biden administration has been. This is just my personal opinion, how I'm reading in all of that. It's not an endorsement for Trump. I wouldn't say that he's my favorite candidate or whatever. And I'm just a German citizen, so it's even none of my cup of tea to talk about who should be the president. So I'm not saying you should vote either or. I'm just speculating about the outcomes that this will have for US-China relations. And I think, as I summarized with those 3 talking points, they could be surprisingly positive for the Chinese, for Chinese stocks, and kind of a peaceful coexistence, a very pragmatic, a very transactional, a very business-orientated relationship between the US and China in the future. I'm not talking away that there will be fights and bad rhetoric and nationalistic movements in the United States by this new, possibly new Trump administration. So it won't be all good and great, but I would say under everything, like on the bottom line, under everything that we've just talked through, the Chinese would prefer it as a positive outcome. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you in my next videos.